we go. Here's how the Boston Herald will look tomorrow. One of the two major papers in Boston, deadly day. Its description of Sunday, and you can see the photo there as well. The Dallas Morning News in Dallas, Texas, day 5. There we go. A tough fight, and I've got two others I want to do if you guys stay with me. Two papers in Detroit, okay? The Detroit Free Press, first casualties of war. So everybody's leading pretty much the same way, if not the same words, the same notion that it was a very tough day, and the Detroit News, I think, probably said it as well as anyone could with the pictures of the 5 POWs on top. Grim day for the U.S. Soldiers killed, wounded, taken prisoners as resistance mounts on the road to Baghdad. We have an update for those of you who just may be coming in and want to get the headlines. Heidi Collins has that, and we have much more.
Actually, it's Darren Kagan live in Kuwait City. Aaron, the air campaign against Baghdad continued Monday on day 5 of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Explosions rocked the capital as coalition aircraft and missiles hit targets in and around the city. The targets included an Iraqi Air Force building and previously bombed targets in the southeast part of Baghdad. The Pentagon says that 12 U.S. soldiers who went missing after fighting in southern Iraq today have either been captured or killed. The Arab television network Al Jazeera today broadcast video of what were said to be the bodies of at least 4 soldiers. In southern Iraq, there is a search and rescue operation for 2 missing British soldiers. The British Defense Ministry says the 2 were attacked on Sunday. Earlier Sunday, 2 British pilots were killed when their Tornado GR-4 was downed by U.S. Patriot missiles in Kuwait. About 60 miles south of Baghdad, Apache helicopters attacked a Republican Guard armored division. Carl Penhall accompanied the 11th Attack Helicopter Regiment, and he says the choppers ran into what he described as a wall of anti-aircraft fire. The U.S. helicopters targeted Republican Guard tanks and artillery pieces. The Pentagon says U.S. troops have secured a facility in southern Iraq that may have produced chemical weapons. The plant is in Najaf, that is some 90 miles south of Baghdad. Officials say it's unclear what, if any, materials are still present at the plant. The U.S. military says at least 1 Iraqi general was taken into custody in Najaf and that he is talking. And back in the States, the Academy Awards went on as scheduled tonight. There was tight security and the red carpet festivities were canceled. Adrian Brody was winner of Best Actor for The Pianist. He received a standing ovation when he asked for a swift and peaceful resolution to the war in Iraq. The Oscar for Best Actress went to Nicole Kidman for her work in The Hours. Kidman said the Oscars had to go on in order to honor their tradition. Those are the headlines at this hour. You're watching CNN, the most trusted name in news. And Aaron, I can tell you that the Oscars are being broadcast live both here in Kuwait and, according to the website, in Iraq as well. Back to you.
Thank you. That was the question I was going to ask. And Darren, I promise you, I know the difference between you and Heidi. I apologize for the...
hair color, if nothing else.
Thank you. You have permission to call me Miles one time. Thank you, Darren. We haven't so far seen much of anything from northern Iraq in the last couple of hours. It's been pretty quiet there. So for all the talk about northern Iraq, we haven't seen very much there, just occasional reports of coalition bombing. But there is, of course, this expectation that the ground fighting could begin there soon. And so here's CNN's Brent Sadler.
A section of Iraq's northern front, less than a mile from our camera. Saddam Hussein's troops are spread along the ridgeline. Uncertain strength lies to their rear. But take a close look at what these Iraqi soldiers are busy doing, disregarding the threat of airstrikes. They dig trenches, plant landmines, and set explosives on the road to Mosul, an apparent effort to keep their foes at bay. It coincides with a reported changeover in some units manning these positions, and follows Kurdish claims that some troops were on the verge of succumbing to defeat. Instead, it seems, new orders are being given and obeyed. No sign of mutiny here. Soldiers maintain their weapons, adjust a mortar tube, and fire sporadic bursts from heavy caliber machine guns towards Kurdish lines. Kurds take cover in the virtual ghost town of Kalak. Kalak nestles beneath the Iraqi fortifications, a Kurdish frontline community that has lived in the shadow of Saddam Hussein's forces for 12 years. Most people shut their shops here and fled their homes on the eve of war, but a few families remain, relatives of Kurdish fighters, and these two families with 18 children between them. Their fathers say there seems no point in running away. I'll take a chance and stay here, says Kamal Smai. If it's my fate to die, I'll die in my own home. And for the few who remain here, a hope that the apparent resolve of these Iraqi soldiers will soon break. Saddam Hussein's command and control of his troops along this northern front behind me are under greater pressure as US and coalition forces fight their way towards Baghdad. But it may only be a matter of time before they start feeling the crunch, even though what you see today remains a static northern front. One other change, as you can see here, in the last few hours, a dramatic change in weather conditions, strong wind and rain now lashing those Iraqi dugout positions along the ridge line behind me. Back to you, Aaron.
How far are you from the Iraqi positions?
Aaron, from this position, I guess it would be about 2 miles. We were using a special lens to get inside those positions yesterday, and we were less than a mile there. You can clearly see, as you saw in that report, what it's like inside there. And we do know that there have been sporadic attacks against this front line. But if you think about it in the broader picture, Aaron, for the moment this area remains fairly stable. No Turkish troops have come in here, no fighting, hostile actions by the Kurdish fighters against the Iraqis, sporadic fire from Iraqi troops in those positions behind me, perhaps getting a little nervous, particularly as we move closer to watch what they are doing, the media that is. But for the moment, there doesn't seem to be much point in really changing the status quo here, shaking it to pieces, because that could in actual fact work against coalition interests by stabilizing this area before any American troop presence is on the ground here. Just one of the theories that's being tossed around here by Kurdish political leaders. Back to you, Aaron.
You know, just one other thing, how different it might look literally on the piece of land you're standing on, or at least 2 miles away, how different it might look if the Turkish parliament back 3 weeks or so ago had voted to allow the Americans to base in Turkey and launch a ground invasion as they wanted to from Turkey.
Absolutely, you would have seen more than 60,000 US troops in here, plus armor, really spread out along the front line, heading towards those two key northern Iraqi cities under Saddam Hussein's control of Mosul, which is over that side of my left shoulder, and of course Kirkuk, those two main cities which sit atop Iraq's vast oil reserves in this part of the country. You have the exact reverse now. You know, you don't have, which on the positive side is good, you don't have the Turkish army coming into this area, potentially creating a Turkish-Kurdish fight, because the Turks wanted to come in here along with the US troops. So really, it's a very strange feeling here, Aaron. Baghdad, we could drive just perhaps 3 hours from here. We can see the level of fighting that's going on as coalition forces make their progress towards Baghdad, whereas here in the northern part of the country, maybe 120,000 Iraqi troops, not the Republican Guard, of course, the hardcore of Saddam Hussein's fighting force, but 120,000, 3 army corps spread across a 500-mile front line. This is a significant part of Saddam's army, controlled by hardliners, officers from his Sunnite heartland area of places like Tikrit, the birthplace of Saddam Hussein, Ramadi, Mosul. So really, this is a loose end, a problem that sooner or later is going to have to be taken care of. Aaron.
Thank you very much, Brent Sadler, up there in northern Iraq, sort of waiting for a boot to drop, I guess, General. You nodded that this is an area that ultimately is going to have to be dealt with, and dealing with it is we don't know this, but this should not be a walk in the park.
Well, this is going to be a tough area because if you imagine the scenario that we're in right now where you don't have the forces coming in from the north, but you close in around Baghdad, and let's say you do defeat Saddam Hussein there, and let's say you take over the government, you're left with all these troops up there and all these hardliners who really aren't defeated. And you're left with the Fedayeen, and you really don't know what their attitude is going to be. But the initial response is going to be to try to use some of these guys to help you maintain control. It's going to be tough.
I'm going to go back to something I didn't get to ask you earlier, if I can. They don't yell at me here. We were talking to Mike Gordon at the Times about trying to execute this operation with the number of troops that they had. And relative to the Gulf War, it is a much smaller force. And yes, the weapons are much more sophisticated. Do you now believe or have some suspicion that, do you believe there are enough forces in the area not to get the job done, not to affect the end outcome, but to do it in the quickest, most efficient, least destructive, and safest way?
No, I don't. I would have preferred more forces there. But the forces that are there now probably will be adequate to do the job. It all depends on the enemy. But when you're doing military planning, what you'd like to do is moderately conservative planning. In other words, you want to figure on some bad days and lots of things that go wrong. You still want to be able to handle it in robust fashion. We're missing 3 heavy Army divisions that never got there.
And those 3 heavy Army divisions would have done what?
They would have been with the 3rd Infantry Division and with the Marines, and you would have moved up through this country. You would have been more capable of dealing with the contingencies that we've already seen today. You would have taken out the missile launching sites in eastern Iraq. You would have had a robust rear area where you'd had continuous heavy Army forces moving through. You wouldn't be bypassing cities and then coming back to find the Fedayeen come in.
The kind of thing we sat here and watched last night would not have happened, and is the argument. I'm not taking
No, it would have happened, but you would have dealt with it with a much smaller proportion of your force. It wouldn't have any strategic significance.
Okay, and now you're the Secretary of Defense. I've asked you to play about 9 different roles over the last 4 days. Now you're the Secretary of Defense, and you say, no, General Franks, you can't have that because why?
Well, I think he approved it. I don't fully understand everything that happened. I mean, we're not on the inside of the operation. These divisions were scheduled to deploy.
They just didn't get there.
They didn't get there. One of them, was orbiting in the Mediterranean out there for 30 days waiting for the Turkish government to make up its mind, but we let it sit there, and I don't know all the factors that went into that decision. I'm not in a position to say it was a bad decision or a good decision, but it's simply a fact that when you look at the magnitude of the tasks, yes, our air power is wonderful, and we should be able to handle this, but our boots on the ground strength is low. And what that means is you don't have the capacity to divert large portions of your force to handle enemy prisoners, clear areas in zone, leave a squad to mark a critical turn on the main supply route and guard it. There's a very hard, tough, strong crust closing up to Baghdad.
And again, or maybe I make too much of this, but there is this long supply line. I don't know, it was an hour or so ago, we looked at that refueling spot in the desert. TARP, is that right?
Yeah, forward arm refuel.
Be careful of saying things like that. And it's a complicated logistical task to maintain the supply line. It requires people.
That's exactly right. It does. Now, it's a calculated risk. And the command believes it can do this job with the forces. That's what they've said. And I hope they're right. I haven't seen all the details of it, and I trust their judgment. But if you're asking me as an old soldier and looking at the magnitude of the task, I always like to have an insurance policy there.
We were talking about air power a second ago. Bob Franken has been at, I believe still is, at an air base out in Kuwait. No more detail on that than that, but Bob is on the phone with us now. Bob, what is going on in your location?
Well, okay, first of all, the official description of this is an air base near the Iraq border. There are some sensitivities with the government that are oftentimes difficult to sustain. What's going on now is a continuation, pretty much a leveling off of the number of flights that come out of here. basically the areas that are covered by this air base are everything but Baghdad. It's about 300 flights a day, military missions that go out of here. And there are also is a center of search and rescue efforts. Now, we were talking in the last couple of days about how heavily classified certain information was. We were not able to report, for instance, that the search and rescue efforts for the downed British pilot, Royal Air Force pilot, had been conducted out of here. We can now report that. When this unit, the CSAR, which is the Combat Search and Rescue Unit, left here yesterday morning, they went out to search for the British pilot, were unable to find him. We have no word that he has been found, as a matter of fact. Then they were diverted, and this was also classified at the time, to a mission where 7 Special Forces troops deep into Iraq, quote unquote, were under fire. They were able to successfully pull all of them out. The pilot said that they had to get out of the plane and, in fact, use their weapons themselves. Then they came back, took them to a safe location, and then went out again to take some inspectors from the British military out to the site of the British Air Force, the Royal Air Force crash. So those are the details. Search and rescue is one of the important missions at this base. As a matter of fact, we can also report that they have taken some of their helicopters, their operation, and have gone deep into Iraq themselves to set up what they call a forward location. We're endeavoring to, in fact, bring more information from there about that. But this is a base that is very, very busy. It's a vital part of the air war that's going on right now, and it looks like it's going to stay that way. Anderson?
Bob, thank you. Everybody's misidentifying everybody today. Bob, can you describe how they go about these search and rescue operations? Are these done by helicopters? Are they by fixed wings? Are they both? How does that work?
Yes, both. The helicopters, of course, are the vehicle for search and rescue. They are HH-60s. They call them the Jollies. They are really modified Blackhawks. And they go out with 6-man crews, all specialists, heavily armed, of course. They call themselves the 911s of the Air Force. They are accompanied by combat planes. In the case of yesterday, they were accompanied by A-10s, the anti-tank planes that really are so vicious and provide such such cover. That's the kind of thing that it specializes in. So they go out in units like that. They also oftentimes refuel in the course of their mission, so they can be out hours at a time. Aaron?
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Bob. Bob Franken reporting on the air operations. Bob noted that 2 British pilots remain missing. It is a reminder not simply that there are 40,000 or so British troops in the region, but that in fact the British have suffered considerably in the early days of the war, which is one of the things we took a look at today.
As the coalition forces push closer to Baghdad, the loss of life, as in all wars, is inevitable. But in this war, the British have suffered hard early. Today, the first British casualties of friendly fire. British military officials say one of their aircraft carrying 2 pilots was shot down near the Kuwait border by an American Patriot missile. Both pilots killed.
A detailed investigation is underway, so we must not rush to judge. We need to establish exactly how this happened so we can take steps to minimize the risks in the future.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Richard Myers.
I think every coalition member that is fighting in Iraq understands very much what they're fighting for, and they know that these sorts of things can happen, unfortunately will happen from time to time.
For the British, this has been the 3rd tragedy since the war began just 4 days ago. On Saturday, a mid-air collision between 2 Navy Sea King helicopters like this one killed 6 British crew members and 1 American. A day earlier, a U.S. Marine helicopter crashed in Kuwait, killing 8 British and 4 Americans on board. The first casualties of the war, an accident. The mournful reaction back home in England has been widespread. One of those killed played in his company's brass band. His instrument lay on his chair in his memory. And in a local pub, a rugby teammate remembers his good and close friend, Lance Corporal Llewellyn Evans, one of this war's first casualties.
Very, very close. You know, we're absolutely gutted. We're absolutely gutted what's happened here.
As I assume most of you know, the British public was far less supportive of the notion. It was a very difficult political decision for Mr. Blair, Tony Blair, and I don't know, maybe David, somebody back there, Jennifer, somebody can take a look and see if there's any polling in Britain to get a sense of how and if and how the mood in Britain has shifted as this war has gone on and they've taken some hits. General, is there, you've had to manage these multi-country sort of operations. Is there resentment in some ways towards the Americans because they call the shots and they're the big guys out there, and these other ones, do they others feel that they're tagging along?
Sure, there's some of that. There are always those who are envious of the equipment quality that the United States has, and the United States we're the big dog, and we do tend to let people know that, and we do tend to call the shots, and we have to be very careful how we do that, or we engender a lot of reaction. But with respect to the British, they've been wonderful allies through many, many different crises with the United States. Prime Minister Blair has been extraordinarily courageous, and the British public really love their armed forces, and when their armed forces are deployed, they tend to support them personally. They tend to look to the commanders there for their courage and their integrity. And we saw this in Kosovo, we saw this in the Gulf War, we saw it in the Falklands.
I'm trying to think of the right word. Essentially, do these armies function in the same way? Do they have the same sort of tactical thinking and strategic thinking? Is it easy to integrate them, or do you have to reteach?
Well, we're using the same kind of map symbols, and we've had NATO commonality, but we think differently because we're probably 10 to 15 years more advanced in terms of the Army thinking, the Army technology. The Brits are
thinking
just now,
or technology?
It's both. The thinking drives the technology, but then the technology forces you to continue to work your thoughts.
Give me an example of thinking.
Apache helicopters and ATACMS missiles. We brought them in the 1980s. We created a concept called deep battle. It's the idea that in World War II, if you were a 3-star general, you could tell people where to go on a map, but then you couldn't affect the minute-by-minute flow of the battle. Lieutenant General Scott Wallace, who's the 5th Corps commander, sent those Apaches in there, and that was his striking power against the Medina Brigade, and he was affecting battle, just as if he'd been a colonel or a captain on the front line. He was looking at real-time intelligence. He was going to affect the battle in a period of a few minutes after those Apaches were launched, and he had the launch authority for them. So the British Army has just now gotten its Apaches. It doesn't have the long-range missiles, and it's just now working its way into all the electronics of position location and so forth that we're very familiar with. We were driven to it because if you're going to fight deep, you have to know where your forces are. So with the technology, we've gone to another level of depth in terms of military analysis and thought.
Do you go to the same war schools? Do you read the same books? Or do, for example, the British read the great British military strategists and generals and so on, and the Americans read the great American strategists and generals? Or are you all reading the same thing? The guy's name escapes me, but the Chinese strategist,
Sun Tzu
of 2,000 years ago.
Sure, and we're reading John Keegan, The Face of Battle, and we're reading a lot of the similar stuff, and we send officers to the British schools and they send officers to our schools, and we send some of our officers to serve in their units and they send some of their officers to serve in our units. But, it's that old joke about two people divided by a common language. And there are differences in the way people perceive military problems. There's a perception on the part of some of the British officers that the Americans don't want to take risks with their soldiers. There's a perception on the part of some of the American officers that the Brits don't fully appreciate American technology. And you have to work through these things in practical ways and build on your common sense of purpose and common understanding to strengthen your relationship. And that's what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really interesting to me. Thank you, General Clark, as always. It is Monday morning, literally Monday morning now in the east, 23 minutes past midnight. We'll take a short break, and our coverage of the war on Iraq will continue here on CNN.
If it didn't have so much style, it'd be just like any other midsize car. The L300 from Saturn.
Coming to DVD. Good morning, Will. So nice of you to visit. Experience the most chilling thriller since The Silence of the Lambs. Red Dragon.
I need your advice, Dr. Lecter. You want to know how he's choosing them, don't you?
A suspenseful masterpiece. The best Hannibal movie yet.
Give me what I need. Just tell me.
Let the DVD take you inside the mind of Hannibal Lecter. Hosted by Hannibal Lecter. Be among the first to own Red Dragon on DVD April 1st.
As the war in Iraq continues, CNN is there. From the front lines to the home front. Around the world, around the clock. When you need to know, stay with CNN, the most trusted name in news.
"8:25 in the morning in Baghdad on a Monday morning. The city was hit by a series of explosions at various points overnight. The last one that we recall was about 3 or so in the morning. 3 or 4 very loud explosions. The night sky went from jet black to that orange look. Now it appears calm, and who knows what the day will bring for the citizens. You can see some smoke burning in the background there from one of the camera locations, moving across to the left side of the screen, fairly low on the horizon. Whether that is the leftover from something that happened overnight or something that happened recently. If it was something that happened recently, I know we would have heard it. I'm confident of that. So the nature of it, I do not know. I think it was General Shepard who said it was his impression that the bombing had moved a bit closer toward the center of the city, the bombing that occurred in the nighttime. And still, it has been a difficult day. It was a difficult Sunday for the coalition side, and the Iraqis certainly made the most of it in terms of what they put out on TV for both Iraqi citizens to see and for the world to see, and specifically for the Arab world to see, in their hope that if they can put enough pressure on the Americans and on the British on the coalition side, there will be international pressure for a ceasefire, because the Iraqis understand, as we do and as you do, that that is their hope. Their hope is that somehow international pressure will be brought to bear on the American government and on the coalition generally, but specifically on the American government, to stop the war before it makes its way to Baghdad. Ultimately, they know, they certainly know that they will not win the war with armies. And so they need to win the war otherwise, and part of the reason they put out some of the pictures that they put out, and they were, those of you who have been with us at the beginning, I described them as vile. I saw them, and they were, is to try and put that sort of pressure on the American side. At about this time, on the international pressure on the American side, at about this point last night, I guess it was maybe a little later, we found ourselves in a moment of both the war and journalism in collision when we joined up with the British pool feed of a live firefight as they tried to control an area outside of Unqsar, and it went on for 4 hours, as I recall, until air power finally brought it to a halt. For those who left it before it ended or didn't see it at all, here's a condensed version of how it played out, but just keep in mind that as you look at it on tape, this all played out around the world. Literally, there were feeds of this going out around the world last night. It's reported by David Bowden, the British pool reporter.
This situation has not come to a halt yet. This is ongoing. It is not yet declared safe. I tell you, I overheard, and you can probably hear that those shadowy figures, they've got eyes on them, as they say here now. Mike, do you feel you're safe enough there? Mike Donnelly, my cameraman, do you feel you're safe enough where you are?
No, we got 2 to 3 inside the window moving to green khaki. We took 2 pop shots over the heads. We opened fire on them.
When this all started off originally, it was just men with their M16s and machine guns who ran up onto the top of this berm and started pouring fire down onto that area.
That tall building, shoot a javelin right into it. Javelin, get the javelin. That tall building, shoot a javelin right into it.
Brought the javelin weapon system up to bear. The first shot went a little bit long.
It's off. That was off.
Second shot, direct impact to that building. Once that building was hit, then it became very apparent that there was a lot of movement in that area. We had troops start moving back and forth. We began engaging with the machine guns, and just people started just popping out of everywhere.
Put it in there. XO!
Trying to see!
They're still trying to clear this area. There are more instructions going out now. I can't hear exactly what's being said, but you can hear for yourselves. More live firing here at Qasr.
Hold fire! Hold fire! Hold fire! Conserve your ammunition!
Roger, right now we just got a confirmation that we've got some pop shots. I guess somebody's trying to return fire with the tanks onto the tanks. Apparently there's somebody back there apparently that wants to keep going.
Vehicles approaching from
Is it still dangerous out there?
It's cat vehicles
As far as me at ground level with my squad, there's always a threat. I mean, we don't adhere to reports from anybody that the threat has gone away, this area is secured. We're always maintaining our posture here on the platoon level to ensure that we here are always constantly ready for a fight, because it could pop up from anywhere.
That's how it played out last night. It was something to watch. About 1/2 we should check. We should catch everyone up on the headlines, and we'll come back and take care of some more business here. Darren Kagan is in Kuwait, and she has a quick overview of the day. Darren.
Good morning. It's just about 8:30 in the morning here in Kuwait City. I'm Darren Kagan. The Pentagon says that U.S. troops have taken a plant in southern Iraq that may have produced chemical weapons. The plant is in Najaf, that is some 90 miles south of Baghdad. Officials say it's unclear what, if any, materials are still present at that plant. The U.S. military also said that at least one Iraqi general was taken into custody in Najaf and that he is talking. Near Nasiriyah, the first American soldiers were taken prisoner in an ambush by Iraqi soldiers. The U.S. military says that it happened when a U.S. convoy took a wrong turn. Iraqi TV and Al Jazeera network showed video of several captured and killed American soldiers in Iraqi custody. U.S. military officials say that 12 American soldiers were captured or killed in the ambush. The Pentagon says that 2 U.S. cruise missiles missed their targets and ended up landing in Turkey. They landed in unpopulated areas, and the Pentagon says no one was hurt. It's not known where the missiles were launched from. In the U.S., gas prices are apparently leveling off. The latest Lundberg survey showing Americans paying an average of $1.73 a gallon. That is just a penny more than it was 2 weeks ago. Crude oil prices dropped after President Bush's ultimatum to Saddam Hussein last Monday. Humanitarian supplies are being loaded in Kuwait, and President Bush says that massive amounts of aid should be on its way to Iraq within the next 36 hours. The president says that coalition forces are securing southern Iraq and the country's only port. And in the States, the Academy Awards went on as scheduled tonight. There was tight security, and the red carpet festivities were canceled. Chicago was the big winner. It got 6 awards, including Best Picture. Catherine Zeta-Jones won Best Supporting Actress for her performance in Chicago. There, meanwhile, was a surprise win for Roman Polanski, who won the award for Best Director for The Pianist, and Adrian Brody won Best Actor for the same movie. Those are the headlines at this hour. Now we toss it back to Aaron in Atlanta, where it is a lot quieter than it has been over the last 12 hours or so here in Kuwait City. Aaron.
Has it been difficult there the last 12 hours?
Yeah, we had about 24 hours where things had quieted down, no sirens. Then we woke up at 1 a.m. local time to sirens and a loud boom over the city. It was yet another missile being launched from Iraq toward Kuwait. The Kuwaiti Air Force was able to shoot that down using American-made Patriot missiles, and that landed north of the residential area of Kuwait City. Then there was another siren around 5 a.m., but that turned out to be a false alarm.
Darren, thank you. Stay safe. It's not one thing, it's another, I guess. Thank you. General, quickly,
yeah.
This is actually a bit of what we were talking about before. We were talking about the force and the limitations of the force. These missiles don't travel that far, right? I mean,
that's right. I mean, maybe 100 miles.
Right. So even though the Americans and the British have pushed, and as the Defense Secretary would say, the Polish and the Australian forces that are also there have pushed well beyond a 100-mile line, they have not cleared out all of the dangerous pockets that exist behind them.
That's exactly right.
And that's because I have no business being critical one way or another, but that's because there aren't enough forces there to do it.
Or because the commanders have decided to accept the risk of what's left behind and push to Baghdad and get it over with, because in their view, the timing of it is a rapid conclusion in Baghdad is the fastest way to reduce the risk. And, that's the commander's call.
Okay, but that is a pretty considerable risk, it would seem to me. A missile that can get to Kuwait City, for example. That's a big city with a lot of people, and if something really bad is on the tip of that missile, that would be an awful thing, right?
Well, we've been worried about that. And it was part of the calculus that went into this operation. But they did leave behind the Patriots there, U.S. Patriots plus the Kuwaiti Patriots, slightly different systems, but they left them there specifically to protect, and thus far they have been effective in shooting down the Patriots.
And in fairness to their position, the Patriots have worked so far, as best we know. There was all this controversy in the first Gulf War about what was originally reported and what turned out to be. There does seem to be a little more vetting of the information this time, and they seem to have worked. So.
It's a matter of risk, and everything in this campaign is, in one way or another, it's trade-off. It's timing, it's risk, and so forth. And that's the risk that was accepted, and we'll have to wait and see the results, see if it was good judgment.
Thanks, sir. It's a bit difficult not to get caught up in all the images we've been seeing every day of the war. There's live satellite images from here and live satellite images from the battlefields, and they do capture our imagination to some degree. They capture our attention, but there are also other stories that are perhaps not so dramatic, if you will. They are the people far from the battlefields who are struggling for food, who are trying to find safety, and there are places where there is neither of those two things. CNN's Jane Arraf reports tonight from northern Iraq.
How to keep a family safe in wartime? For these Iraqi Kurds, the answer is to move and keep moving. Fatima lost her leg to frostbite when she tried to cross the mountains barefoot to Turkey, along with 500,000 other Kurds in the 1991 Gulf War. Last week, she and her entire village fled again. I'm afraid of Saddam, she says. Kurds particularly have reason to be afraid. Thousands died in the 1980s when the Iraqi government destroyed Kurdish towns and used chemical gas against the Kurds. In 1991, 500,000 Kurds fled in terror towards the Turkish border. Hundreds froze to death on the way. Iraqi Kurds have come a long way since the Gulf War. They have their own government, their own militia. As one Kurdish leader says, we are no longer a people who can be gassed and killed. We can defend ourselves, but people are still afraid. These families are among more than 400,000 in this part of Iraqi Kurdistan who have abandoned their homes for the supposedly safer countryside. All the world knows this is the third time this has happened to us, says Nasreen Mahmoud. Our children in this cold and rain. In this part of northern Iraq alone, up to 10,000 Kurds have settled like this, in homemade tents by the side of the highway. It's early spring, but the temperature is freezing and the ground is muddy. Water comes from a stream down the road. There's been some movement back to the cities as some Iraqi forces have moved back from front lines. But these people's homes are just across the front lines. From their village of Aluka in Kurdish-controlled territory, Majid Ahmed Majid saw on Sunday repeated bombing of the Iraqi military outpost just 2 miles, 3 kilometers away. Kurdish authorities are trying to resettle people like these in schools, mosques, and proper refugee camps. But international aid agencies are holding back supplies until refugees start flooding in from the rest of Iraq.
We have shortages in tents, a lot of non-food items. We have a lot of shortages. The supplies we have here in northern Iraq, it's very limited. We have a very limited resources.
No matter how limited the resources, and despite the cold and freezing rain, these families are choosing their relative safety of the mountains. Jane Araf, CNN, near Rashenka village in northern Iraq.
The view from there tonight. Scott McLeod joins us now. Scott is the Time Magazine bureau chief in Cairo. Obviously, how all of this is being perceived in that part of the world is enormously important to the administration, and I suppose in some respects should be important to all of us because it can determine our own level of risk. Scott, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Tell me how much play today those pictures of the POWs and the dead Americans got in your part of the world.
It's getting a lot of attention. You know, Arabs are angry about the war, and it's not really because they're supporting Saddam Hussein this time, but they feel for the Iraqi people. They don't want the Iraqi people to suffer under these bombardments. And there's also, let's say, a sort of emotional aspect to this, a nationalistic or a patriotic type of emotion where people don't want to see the Arab homeland attacked by a foreign power, especially a Western power. And so these pictures are doing two things. One is giving people, you know, the feeling that the Arabs are fighting back, and that's making them feel good. But a lot of Arabs are also upset about the pictures that they saw, and it brought home the misery of war that I think there's a very widespread feeling in the Arab world that we don't want this war because we've seen enough tragedy in this part of the world.
I would assume that far more inflammatory would be pictures of of Iraqi casualties. There was the Iraqi government took reporters to a hospital the other day to show what they said were the 200 or so civilians hurt. Did those also get wide play in your part of the world?
Yeah, those are getting front page play. Al Jazeera, the very widely watched Arabic satellite channel, has been not only showing those pictures pretty frequently, but also the protests around the world, and particularly in the Arab world, to show what the impact so far is in the Arab world.
There's, if the story on Sunday in the United States was that it was a bad day for the Americans, and if that's how it's being played worldwide, the potential for the story on Monday, it seems to me, is that if this chemical plant that was found turns out to be, and we don't know that, there's a suspicion, turns out to be a chemical weapons manufacturing site, would the reality that the Iraqis did have chemical weapons change in any way the reaction to the war in the Arab world?
To some extent. You know, if the war can be seen more and more as justified, that will certainly have some impact. But it would have to be pretty dramatic, because for a variety of reasons, Arabs are very angry, very upset about the war. Starting, for example, with the fact that they were predisposed to be anti-American about the attack, because there's a lot of frustration about the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian areas, and a widespread feeling among Arabs that the United States hasn't done very much to stop that, or to bring peace to the Arabs, or to the Palestinians and the Israelis. And then you kind of had a backlash to September 11th, where there was a widespread feeling in the Arab world that Americans especially were blaming Islam or blaming the Arab culture for what happened on September 11th, as opposed to blaming a few extremists. And so before the attack started, and we've had this, you know, drum roll for this war for many months, there was a lot of feeling of being against the war. And so now that the war has commenced without a UN or an international support, much less a support among Arabs or even Arab governments, there's a lot of anger about, you know, American arrogance and American meddling in the Middle East, beating up on the Arabs. And so these feelings are pretty deep, and it's going to take a lot to overcome them. I think they can be overcome, but I don't think it will be the discovery of a chemical plant, or unless it's something very dramatic, it's going to make a huge difference. It'll make some difference to intellectuals and people who realize the danger that Saddam Hussein poses. But at this point, for most Arabs, this is not a war between America and Saddam Hussein. It's more of a war between America and the Arab nation, or part of the Arab nation.
We've been talking mostly so far in the conversation about sort of Arab street feeling. Is there nervousness within Arab governments about the president's professed desire to politically, in many ways, reshape the map of the Arab world? Are those governments must get a little nervous about that sort of thing?
Most officials I've spoken to in some of the governments that would be affected or could be affected don't seem to be very worried about it. They think that the United States is going to have its hands full with Iraq, rebuilding Iraqi life after the war, and they also don't have very much hope or expectation that there will be democracy in Iraq very soon. At this point, the Arabs are seeing this, they're not taking it very seriously, even Arab governments. They're more looking at this as a sign of the kind of lack of understanding about the region on the part of the Bush administration than a serious threat to their stability or their continuation in office.
And just a final question, Scott. There was a large demonstration in Cairo. There have been demonstrations around the Arab world, some nastier than others, I guess you'd say. Has any of the reaction over the last 4 or 5 days surprised you, one way or another?
I was surprised that the reaction to the war was so immediate. You know, we had demonstrations in most of the campuses around the Arab world on Thursday, and then pretty intense protests on Friday as well after the Friday prayers. A lot of angry talk from the pulpits on Friday in the mosques, and the intensity of it has surprised me, and I think that things are well under control. We've only had a few deaths, even here in Cairo, where things got a bit out of control on Friday afternoon. The security forces showed that they were able to get this under control. So I think we should be careful not to exaggerate the level of violence or unrest, but it is a worrying sign. We would have been, the region would be better off with efforts that are calming tensions and building bridges and so on. This is what, you know, even the American administration wants to do eventually. But so far, the war has been something that's produced, you know, divisions and reactions. And to be doing so quickly in the war, if the war is not over quickly we're going to see a rolling effect of these protests, I think.
Scott, thank you very much. Scott McLeod, who's the bureau chief for Time Magazine in Cairo. Thanks, and we'll be checking back with you as we go along. We just came across a bit ago some pictures out in the desert. I think this came out of Lebanese TV. What appears now, according to the reporting, to be an oil pipeline fire there. We had some reporting earlier tonight that from Christian Amanpour that the oil fields themselves are essentially secured and that they did not find, coalition forces did not find that they had been booby-trapped. There weren't explosives around, and there was no indication of that sort of activity. So it may be that this fire in this oil pipeline is, there may have been munitions or something, and in fact, I don't know if we'll see it in this shot, but I know that when the camera panned over, there was a large store of munitions in the area. In any case, even small oil pipeline fires are problematic, and that one's going on as well right now. We'll take a short break. As we take you to break, speaking of Time Magazine, we're talking to Scott McLeod. Some pictures from the still photographers of Time and the people who work for Time will lead us to break. Our coverage of war in Iraq continues after this.
Intensifies. The latest from the front lines, plus Colonel David Hackworth and more. Only on Larry King Live, CNN Tomorrow, 9 Eastern.
So we have a cellist and 2 violinists.
I don't say this just because I was a school teacher. It would be devastating for our young people if music was taken out of the classroom because it's something they can latch onto and find their identity in. When a kid learns how to take that and make it his own, it's amazing. It's really fun to see a child light up like that and to know that they're getting it.
Music lets kids shine. Help us keep it in our schools. Join Blue from American Express. Support Save the Music. Log on to find out how.
I've got to get a new car.
I've got to get to my Lincoln Mercury dealer.
Think big at your Lincoln Mercury dealer's Think Big sales event, where you can get big incentives on every Lincoln and Mercury, including Mountaineer, the new Lincoln Aviator, and Navigator, with its available power folding third-row seats and available navigation system. Save big with special limited time incentives on every Lincoln and Mercury. Think big now through March 31st. See your local Lincoln Mercury dealer today.
Hey kids ages 7 to 12, sign up now for the Golf Channel's Drive, Chip, and Putt Junior Golf Skills Competition. It's free, and even if you've never played golf, we'll help you get your swing going. Winners may have a chance to compete in the National Championship, so don't miss out on a free day of food, fun, and golf. Space is limited, so register now at thegolfchannel.com or the following location. And we'll see you at the Golf Channel's Drive, Chip, and Putt.
Brought to you by your local Chrysler dealerships and Comcast.
Restaurants have been part of the Demas family for generations. Over the years, they perfected unique recipes from the world over. Today, they serve the area's finest steaks, seafood, pasta, and chicken. For lunch or dinner, experience a legacy of fine food and superior service. The Demas family difference. Demas's in Murfreesboro, Nashville, and Lebanon.
In the northern part of Iraq, where an American soldier is now in custody for, it is alleged, he hasn't been convicted, it is alleged, I guess you would call it this war's version of a fragging incident. We haven't looked at that, but we should, and so we will.
The soldier detained on suspicion of throwing grenades into a command tent of the 101st Airborne last night in northern Kuwait today has a name. Sergeant Ahsan Akbar, stationed at the Airborne's home base, Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
He was having what some people might call, seems, an attitude problem.
Roughly 24 hours after the attack, things are at least somewhat more clear. The suspect, military officials say, threw 3 grenades and fired 2 shots into the command tent. The lone fatality so far, according to the military, was Captain Christopher Scott Seifert. Among the dozen or so hurt was commander of the unit's 1st Brigade, Colonel Ben Hodges, who received some minor injuries. An embedded reporter at the camp said a grenade rolled next to Colonel Hodges, but did not explode.
When somebody's firing at you, you know who the enemy is. When they're standing in the same mess chow line or using the same shower with you, sometimes it's hard to recognize. So it's had a detrimental effect probably on the morale. But the soldiers went over, pumped up, ready to do their mission, knowing what they were supposed to do. And they'll work their way through this, and they'll continue to do their mission in the fashion that 101st soldiers have always done their mission.
It is still unclear precisely what happened last night, but military sources say Sergeant Akbar, who was born Mark Cools, was in an engineering unit and last night had been assigned to guard an ammunition depot where grenades were stored. At this hour, Sergeant Akbar, according to the military again, continues to be questioned by the Army's Criminal Investigation Division.
General Clark, when you look at that last shot of that young man sitting there in the desert, break your heart? Make you angry? Both?
Oh, both. I mean, first of all, I mean, yes, I mean, everybody's angry about how he could do this. How could he attack the leadership of the brigade? It wasn't even personal. He wasn't even part of that brigade. He didn't know those people. You can't imagine what the motivation would be. And I look at him, it's a man who's ruined his life, ruined other lives.
I mean, you can't imagine, or I can't, I mean, I've been out there, that you could get away with it.
Can't get away with it.
Can't get away with it.
Absolutely not.
You're either going to get killed or you're going to get caught. Realistically, those are the 2 options.
Yeah, I know. It's impossible to understand from here what could possibly what could he have been thinking? What is the matter with this young man? And they're going to find out. And but this is a violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's an attack on senior officers. It's murder. At least that's what it would seem to be. It's a very serious crime.
As the chain of command looks at this, will they go to his immediate superior and say what? I mean, they knew he had problems. He had been reprimanded recently. There was a suggestion today that he had expressed to his mother, at least, that he did not believe in the war and could not support the war after his recent conversion, or after his conversion, I'm not sure how recent it was, to Islam. Is there a chain of command question here?
Probably is, Aaron, but I think there's really 2 questions. One is there's military justice. This man took actions that caused the death and serious injury of his fellow soldiers. That's a violation of uniform. That's military justice. And then there's the issue of, well, who was he? And why was he doing this? And why did nobody know about it? And if they did they not appreciate the seriousness of it? And could it have been prevented? And maybe it couldn't have been. Maybe it was such a bizarre action that it couldn't have been. But that question will be asked.
Actually, I wondered about that last night. I mean, we expect a lot from everyone in our universe, from our managers, whether it's in the Army or anywhere else. Given that you are on a military base, there are literally tons of weapons around, grenades and rifles, and everybody's armed and everybody's pumped to one degree or another, and everybody's tired and most everybody's stressed. Is it expected that management, if you will, consider the fact that one of the guys might snap?
Well, yes.
Okay.
I mean, because we call it leadership. And the leader is supposed to know and understand the people that he works with, the people he's responsible for. He's got to know those people intimately, what their hopes and fears and dreams are, and their families and their worries. what is it that would cause someone like that to snap? Somebody you would think would know that, but you know, in many cases like this, there are extenuating factors.
I guess what I'm saying is that the idea that one of your guys might do this to your guys, must that be in the realm of leadership consideration?
Well, if you're asking...
that's not exactly going AWOL.
Well, if you're asking, you know, would a leader think, gee, I wonder if this guy's going to shoot somebody with the weapon?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Probably not the first thing on your mind as a leader. But let's say you're looking at a soldier, he's got an attitude. It's like, you know, he's got his head down. He's not socializing with the other troops in the off-duty. He doesn't give a smart salute. He doesn't say, air assault, sir. He's just sort of there. And you'd hope that somebody says, so what's wrong? I mean, let's talk about this. You don't seem like you're engaged in this thing mentally. You're not with it here. Well, what's the matter, troop? And, you know, it may be a captain who says it. It may be a colonel.
We'll revisit this. We need to take a short break. First, our coverage of the war in Iraq continues in a moment.
Dave. Larry, how is that Dell consolidation going? TCO's down. Uptime? Highly available. Great. And you? Well, you know, we're still running a proprietary Unix-based system. Right.
Yeah. A Dell flexible solution with Dell PowerEdge servers and Intel Xeon processors can help manage your enterprise for less. Easy as Dell. Call or go online today.
You killed me.
What?
There was a bomb. I was going to school.
What did that have to do with me?
You brought drugs. You gave the money. They can't do things like that without money. It's the money.
CNN Tomorrow, we're live from the front lines with overnight developments, updates on the capture of U.S. soldiers, up-to-the-minute troop movements and more on the next American Morning with Paula Zahn. CNN Tomorrow, 7 a.m. Eastern.
I'm Darren Kagan, live in Kuwait City. Let's take a look at the latest headlines. Baghdad has felt more coalition bombs and missiles. Witnesses say the Iraqi Air Force building was among the targets on Sunday, and just 60 miles south of Baghdad, U.S. Apache helicopters attacked a Republican Guard armored division. The Predator drone has seen its first action in Operation Iraqi Freedom. The Pentagon said that a Predator dropped a Hellfire missile on a mobile anti-aircraft gun in southern Iraq. Predators were used to patrol the old southern no-fly zone in Iraq, and they did see action in Afghanistan. And in southern Iraq, U.S. Marines are now in control of a regional Ba'ath Party headquarters in the port city of Qasr. The 15th Expeditionary Unit retrieved